Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Parrot TV Literary Corner. Today's guest is Kim Vodicka, and she is the spokesbitch of a degeneration and was called by Houston Press a softer spoken, more genteel Lydia Lunch. She is the author of 4 full-length poetry collections, most recently The Elvis Machine and Dear Ted, which is forthcoming in 2022. She is also the author of several chapbooks, including a poetic comic book, an EP of sound poems, and an illustrated book of poetry. Her poems, prose, and visual art have been featured in Spork, Paper Dots, Darts, The Thought Erotic, Nasty, Forbidden Futures, Best American Experimental Writing, and many others. For the past decade, she has toured the country performing sound poems in bookstores, dive bars, art galleries, 50s diners, pinup clubs, vintage clothing shops, rooftops, and places of worship. Originally from South Louisiana, she currently lives in Memphis, Tennessee, with her beloved cat, Lula. You can find her at kimvodicka.com. So welcome to the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's actually Vodicka.
Vodicka. I thought it was vodka, but I just was guessing. So sorry about that.
Okay. It's a common mistake.
Yeah.
I get all kinds of different pronunciations.
That's fun. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We'll get started here with some questions. First, one thing I'm curious about is what exactly is a sound poem?
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of different definitions and versions of it. I mean, I consider it to be a poem that focuses primarily on sonic elements built into the poem itself, but can also include extraneous sound. That's like, if there's like a somebody backing you on guitar or synthesizers or whatever else, which is something that I do. I collaborate with musicians, but I think a sound poem can also be kind of just like built into the actual poem. And just using rhythm and cadence and, assonance, consonants, and alliteration and things like that to sort of build a structure of a poem that is more concerned, but not necessarily only concerned or exclusively concerned, but concerned with using sound as meaning more than the meanings of words as meaning. That's how,
very interesting.
Even though my poetry, I think over the years has become a lot more narrative and literal. When I was younger, I used to write things almost purely for the sound of the words, because that's sort of my love language, and my relationship to poetry has always been musical as a first
Interesting.
measure. So.
I think that's kind of fascinating that using language as a instrument, is like a musical instrument. That's very interesting.
That's exactly how I see it.
Yeah, I see. I just was curious because I never heard that phrase, but I have heard that description before.
There's lots of really, really great sound poets. Like Christian Book is a really good one. Carolyn Bergvall. If you go to like Ubu Web, there's all kinds of just audio clips and great sound stuff. I mean, I think that it's just, there's a piece called Projective Verse by Charles Olson, and it's like a poem. So yeah, you might know it. And it's just very brief, but it says several things. But one of the things that I took away from it is kind of thinking of the poem as like sheet music or the voice. And I've always really connected with that.
That's interesting. So you also you've performed throughout the states as far as reading your poetry in front of people. Do you have any interesting experiences to share that like a particular place that you love, that you just fell in love with, or maybe a particular performance?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many. One of the most memorable was performing on the rooftop of Deep Vellum Books in Dallas. They're just wonderful. But it's like a bookstore downstairs, and it's in like the Deep Ellum district of Dallas. And they had never used their rooftop for a performance before, so this was like a thing they were just trying out like for this night, and it was just really, really cool. And Ejno Martin and Jeanette Powers also performed, and they like do this like or at one point were together doing this like really kind of wild, more like performance art stuff with poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like a little play. And it was just like such an interesting night of like performers doing like taking poetry in different directions and like using different media to convey it. So like I was using music, I had a guitar player with me.
Mm-hmm.
The other woman, Lauren Belmore, I'm like hoping I'm remembering that correctly. She had like synthesizers going on, and like, it's just really cool to see like people taking poetry and really turning it into like an event. And then plus we were just like out in the open air on this rooftop as the sun was setting, and there was also like a live band
Mm-hmm.
just kind of off in the wing, like a house band kind of like interjecting when they felt appropriate. Like it just created this
Mm.
like just this total kind of immersive experience throughout the
Wow.
entire evening. It was really cool. I performed in a tennis shoe store in San Diego once.
Oh,
That
wow.
was interesting.
That's an
Super
interesting place.
shoes on the walls behind me, and there we were. And they
Hmm.
set up seats. Um, let's see. Yeah, I performed at this like Ohio. That was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
Like I guess I was kind of like the early evening act before like the stripping was taking place.
Right.
I'm forgetting more stuff. One of my favorite ones was performing at Burroughs bookstore in Brooklyn, just because Burroughs is just so cool. It's one of only maybe like 2 or 3 poetry only bookstores in the
Mm-hmm.
country. Like Innisfree in Boulder is another, and I'm forgetting, there's at least one other, but like it's only poetry. So really, really cool and really well curated, and all kinds of just like rare and deep cut types of stuff there. So just
Mm-hmm.
being there was cool. But I
Yeah,
got
there's
to
one and called Malvern Books in Austin, which is mostly poetry. That's a really good place. I've been there a few times. I really enjoy that.
I've also performed there.
Oh, really?
That was
Wow,
fun.
me too. I've performed there too. That's interesting. We have something in common.
I'm trying to like. There's other. Oh, one of my favorites was in Asheville, North Carolina. Um,
Hmm.
I performed this. It was like in the front. It was like a record store, and so like the perimeter of the walls was like records. Okay. And then there was like a kind of wraparound U-shaped bar, like right there in the same room. And then in the back, it was like a music venue space. So I performed there, and I actually opened for this band called Daikaiju, and they're like
Hmm.
surf rock band that wears like these like freaky masks, and it's all instrumental music, but it's like really fun.
Hmm.
Their big thing that they're known for is they light their all of their equipment on fire. So
Mm.
they like at some point during the show, they just like take lighter fluid out and just like start dousing
Mm.
everything. Like, and they managed to do this without lighting the place on fire. Like, obviously, there's some tremendous skill involved here. And at one point, like, they had everyone in the audience literally lifting each member up, plus like the gear. So like the drummer was being lifted up like on his stool, and then there were people lifting up like the kick drum, lifting up the snare, lifting up the cymbals, lifting up the guitar player. Like it was like I've just like never seen anything like so insane in my life, and I got to open for them, so I was just like, and I knew what they were about beforehand, so I was just like, shh, like I was like really nervous, but it was fun.
That sounds like
Yeah,
a quite
I've had
exciting.
experiences, and like
Hmm.
my absolute favorite thing to do is to just go on tour and pretend to be a rock star and just like do my poetry.
Hmm.
And it's like sometimes there's like fucking 3 people there, sometimes there's fucking 50 to 100. You just never know.
Right. That's very interesting. I think the experience is really what it's about, just going around, different towns and different places, meeting all kinds of people, selling your books. It's fun. I haven't done
Yeah.
it in a while. I haven't done that in a while, but it's very fun to travel. So what can you say about the Elvis Machine as far as, without giving too much away for the readers out there? Is there any, was there a inspiration behind that, or what was the process like for that?
Well, the Elvis Machine is actually a nickname that I have for Memphis. So like
Hmm.
I have jokingly called Memphis the Elvis Machine. And I guess like the story behind that is that like Elvis is such a thing here. Like, you know, Sun Studio like recorded and first released the first Elvis material. He was actually from Tupelo, Mississippi, but like Memphis is where everybody in the surrounding areas would come to perform and record, you know, even well before Elvis, obviously, because he was like ripping off a lot of the like old blues people. But yeah, all these country blues people would come into Memphis and play on Beale Street, and that's why Beale Street's famous. Well, one of many reasons, but that's one of the main. But yeah, so there's always this kind of like looming Elvis shadow over this city that like, I'm not from here. I've been here 5 years. I'm from Louisiana, but I've been here long enough to be able to tell that like Elvis is kind of like this presence. It's kind of like annoying. Like it's not that people here like can't stand Elvis, although I mean some can't, but it's kind of this just like looming thing, and it's like, you know, it gets irritating to feel like, you know, that's the only thing the city is known for, and you know, because Graceland is obviously here too. Graceland's actually amazing to visit. I think I've been twice, but I kind of like felt like the Elvis Machine, just the phrase itself referred to like kind of this like male dominated music scene here that's still very alive and well. It's not that there aren't female artists coming out of here or like doing their thing, but it is pretty male dominated. It does have this vibe of being kind of stuck in the 1950s. Even though it's, you know, got some progressive things going on, but like it's overall like, yeah, that was my vibe when I was writing the book from about like 2015 to 2018 is when I finished it, thereabouts. And yeah, so I was here and like having all of these experiences with the, you know, with local musicians, and like, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a groupie or a starfucker, but I mean, I've had a lot of relationships with local musicians, and started writing about those experiences in poetic form. And I mean, obviously taking liberties, like I would not call the Elvis Machine like directly autobiographical, like in any stretch of the imagination, right? But like but that was like the impetus, was like I was writing poems inspired by like having these romantic / intimate encounters with all these dudes here, like working musicians, because this is a town where you can be a working musician. There are a few towns like that now, but as in like that's how you make your living. I mean, the virus fucked that up for everyone, but like this is a town where like if you're a fucking beast on the guitar, you can move here and just book gigs 6-7 nights a week, and like that's how you make your living. So it's interesting, especially like, so as a performer and someone who also, you know, dabbles in musical collaboration, and then like, you know, having these you know, personal experiences here too, you know, that are inspiring to me. So that is really, that's really what the book is about. So it's very personal, but I think there are a lot of universal sentiments going on, especially in terms of like misogyny and sexism and like fuck boys and like you know, just general fucked up double standards and hypocrisy, and people stuck in their ways, stuck in old mindsets, and you know, kind of being, for the frustration of just kind of like being a very free and like sexually independent woman in a city that's like, as I said on, you know, in the description on the back of the book, like still kissed with the 1950s. So yeah.
Would you like to read a poem?
Yeah, sure. I can read one from that. I guess obviously.
Stun us.
Okay. Man, okay. I want it to be the perfect thing for like how I feel right now. I'm going through some pretty crazy shit here. Like the Elvis Machine basically hit me like with full fucking force recently. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not getting into that. But
okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
fucked around with the wrong person, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
So yeah. Is that? I hear like some kind of buzzing sound. Is that?
That's he unmuted his computer, so it's making a little bit of a buzzing noise.
Okay, cool.
Be fine. So for our viewers out there, this is Kim Vodicka. We're watching the Parrot TV Literary Corner.
Vodicka.
And she's going to put Vodicka.
I'm not a dyke yet, but I mean, we're probably
close. Okay. Well,
we're probably getting goddamn close here. You know, I am bi, but
okay.
I don't use the word disparagingly. So okay.
Right. So she's going to read us a poem.
Yeah. Here we go. I had to just pick it.
Okay.
All right. This is blunt force emotional trauma. All I ever wanted was someone with whom to live an abnormal happy life. But I'm pretty sure this whole love thing ends the same way every time. All I ever wanted was a special little shitbird to make me his lawlessly wedded wife. But all men are the same. All I ever wanted was to live to see the beginning of my abnormal happy life. But I'm pretty sure this whole life thing ends the same way every time. And spoiler alert, I died. Here lies that bitch. She took all of your cum and all of the consequences. She was a real scream queen in the sack. She blew her brains out mid-orgasm. There's really nothing quite like bleeding on a man. But men will have you bleeding tears out of every hole that cries. Men will have you bleeding tears from every orifice, especially if you wait too long to become a dyke. There we go. I wish I could have attended my own funeral. I wish I could visit my own grave. Here lies that bitch. She wasn't special to you, yet emotionally she became you. She was a real scream queen in the sack, shrieking in terror at your poor performance. Fucking her was the only way to make her yours. Fucking her was the only fair fight. And since we are guaranteed to kill that which brings us life, she sat on your dick and died. Men will make all of your holes cry, especially if you douse them in Chanel No. 5. Men will make all of your holes cry. So douse them in Chanel No. 5 and set them ablaze. Become a dyke before it's too late. I attended my own funeral to accept the roses you never gave me while I lived. I visited my own grave to watch you hit on it. In those weaponized times, so few graces were given. Even Christ-like compassion was no match for the fear of God. Even though I was the Jesus of love, it was better than likely that love would not be enough. I ran away and wound up in the very place from which I was trying to run. Like a Barbie in a birdcage, God knows I died trying to create my ideal life, love. Hotter than a stolen pistol in a honeymoon hotel. God knows I died trying to overcome the one. But there's really nothing quite like love to make you not want to live anymore. There's really nothing quite like human nature to make you wish you were never born. There are dudes ready to jerk off at the slightest sight of titty, and there are flowers in the garbage. There are one-hit wonders, and there are two-hit ghosts, and there are Maury Povich nightmares. There are sexual infractions, and there are no consequences, and there are egos to polish. And there goes my glowing empathic heart.
Wow. And I noticed the sound, the way you play with the sounds and the rhythms in there too. It's always very interesting. I think there's a lot of refrain qualities too. So it's very much like a song. That's the Elvis Machine.
It's just beyond even the sound alone. I feel
Right.
from the beginning to the end of the poem. I could
Mm-hmm.
feel the direct experience, especially in the industry. This is very common. You run away from a problem at home, you find yourself in another problem elsewhere. There are indeed flowers in the garbage. I follow every beat
Yes.
of the line. This is very, very powerful. I love it because
Mm-hmm.
when you have you know me. Whenever I see a unique port or a unique poetry presentation, I get into it completely. I have been listening to your
Mm-hmm.
story from the beginning until you read the whole poem. I listened to every part of the line. It's very powerful. It's painful. Though there is,
Mm-hmm.
I can't blame you for generalizing. Men are not the same. That's the truth. We cannot be the same. That's fallacy of generalization. But I got
Yes.
you. I got your message, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel you. Thank you for giving that very powerful presentation. You've already given us the background to the story, I mean, to what really inspired you to write it. But I believe that something specifically must have pushed you to write this poem because it's purely within, from your heart. It's like you were pouring
Mm-hmm.
the pain while you were writing. Tell us a little bit about this poem.
Yeah, it's amazing because I wrote that poem in I think 2018, and it's just incredible to me that it resonates with what I'm going through right now. So it's like I guess I've learned nothing, but I guess
Do
I've
we
learned
ever? Do we ever learn anything?
I've learned exactly fucking nothing. So, but
Right.
yeah, so that it's hard to get into. The flowers in the garbage line came from I was in LA actually right before I wrote that. I have a little cat who's trying to get my attention right now. I was in LA and I was hanging around and doing things, and I went to Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and I noticed that there were these just like overfilling trash cans of like I guess just the flowers from the ceremonies and the burial site,
Mhm.
what do you call that, the interment um ceremonies, and I guess they just like chuck them in the garbage. And so I mean, and I have pictures like of just these like garbage cans just like flowing over with just lilies and roses and greenery and whatnot. And I just was so struck by that. I just thought it was one of the most beautiful images I've ever seen in my life. So that's where that specific image in the poem comes from. That whole poem is inspired by that experience in LA. Most of the Elvis Machine is about Memphis, but that particular piece is more inspired by LA, and then the piece that immediately precedes that one, which is called Blunt Force Drama. So it's Blunt Force Drama and then Blunt Force Emotional Trauma. So they kind of are like companion pieces, and kind of just the one I just read is more kind of just generalizing, I think, a thing that I feel sometimes in the worst of my experiences with men.
Right.
But
But it is
why I
definitely
say
very powerful in the
it's I
presentation
cannot
too.
blame you for generalizing because it depends on the mood you found yourself while you were writing it, and when you feel pains a lot in the real world of yours, there is no way you end up generalizing. But as psychologists would say, you treat people according to their individual traits. It is the
Mhm.
typologist that would treat people according to their location, their race, their color, their etc., their gender. So, and I believe you are not a typologist, you are a psychologist, but the situation made you to be a typologist, which I really enjoy the poem anyway.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's not something I personally believe. I treat
Right.
people on a individual basis, and
Hmm.
like I'm not seeing a man and being like, oh, you're all the same. But I mean, like, I think like a lot of people relate to that. A lot of women and female identifying people relate to these types of sentiments because it's like there's just so much frustration. There's so much like feeling not seen and not heard,
Hmm.
and like to the point where it's like it does almost seem like this like epidemic of like, masculine privilege and just like not accepting accountability, not accepting responsibility, like not even being able to like see the problem that you're creating, which is similar to all types of different privileges.
Hmm.
And I totally understand like other types of frustration, like fucking it's like,
Hmm.
like I think making these hyperbolic like sweeping generalization claims, it's like in a creative work obviously, like it's just to like kind of make a point, and
Right.
make the point hard,
Hmm.
so
It's about invoking the emotion. So it's not necessarily like trying to represent reality directly. It's more like invoking the emotion and the sense that you were feeling in those moments.
Yeah.
sure.
So another question I have is of course, submitting poetry to journals. Have you ever had any interesting rejection letters?
God, I had the letter itself wasn't interesting, but I just had an experience that was God, I'm so glad you're asking this because I think I had probably the craziest experience I've ever had just in the past
Hmm.
like month. So I got work solicited, and I'll leave the names out because they're not, I have nothing against them, and they're nice
Hmm.
people. But it was a solicitation for me to send work, and it was for a themed anthology. And right off the bat, I was like, like replied, and I was like, I don't know if I really have anything that's gonna fit, but I can send you this thing, and maybe you can just see,
Hmm.
like, and it's no problem if it doesn't fit. But I did say, if you, and it was longer, so I was like, well, if you feel like a certain section would fit, like I'd be open to that. Okay, so I sent that. And then I eventually heard back, and what they decided to do was they're like, we edited this poem down to like 20 lines, if that, maybe even less.
Hmm.
And we're talking like this was like a 12 pager at
Hmm.
least. I'm not known for brevity, as I'm sure
Right.
you already got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, they edited this poem down to like 20 lines, this 12-page poem down to 20 lines, and then they were like, if you approve of this, we would love to include it. And I was just like, and also like they kind of cobbled together lines that were mine, but then kind of like changed them, and then like they were like using like enjambment and like things that I would never do. And like I was
Hmm.
just like, I was like, you could have just rejected it. Like this almost feels worse, like
Right.
it felt almost like they were trying to tell me how to write a poem,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I resented it, because like I know what I'm doing, and I know not everybody likes what I do. I know what I do doesn't look or feel like a real poem. Like
Right.
I'm aware, very well aware of that. So it kind of pissed me off. I was cool about it though, and I was just like, I appreciate the time you took to put this together and to consider this, but I think it differs too greatly from the spirit, and the soul, and the voice and everything about the original piece. So I'm gonna have to just pass.
Right. So we have a remaining 8 minutes or so. So, and another question I have, if you can be brief, what possessed you to write sort of the persona poems you wrote for the Dear Ted? I think that was an interesting uh, approach to sort of taking back a story from the assailant and giving it back to the victims. I think that was part of your point. But what gave you that sort of moved you to do that?
I have seen a phenomenon that I call like emotional serial murder.
Mhm.
Where like particularly like manipulative, narcissistic
Mhm.
dudes, not not saying women are immune to this, but it's mostly dudes.
Mhm.
Um like just like have like almost like a thing for like destroying women and their souls, and their hearts. And so like it was inspired by that. Like it is like in my description of it, like of the book, it's like it's about Ted Bundy, but it's not really about
Right.
Ted Bundy. Like, like it's like used as an inspiration for like, just trying to like kind of parse through the I think kind of emotionally evil things that
Mhm.
and do. But it does also like include elements of like the actual of like true crime, I guess,
Right.
but that's not really the main focus. And I was like careful about trying to not make that like really the main focus. And there's nothing from the perspective of Ted Bundy himself in there. Like
Right.
it's all from like female voices.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that was the impetus. There is also a personal experience that
Right.
inspired it. I'm not going to talk about, but
Yeah, of course.
at least not yet. But
Not yet. Maybe a novel or a long poetry book or something in the future. That's what we live for, I guess.
see the book though. This would be it.
Yeah, that would definitely, and maybe it'll be a big seller, and the person behind it will be like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have made this mistake.
I might sue me, but, but I mean, all the clues are there. I think all the clues about who actually inspired it are there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but yeah, so just like kind of I mean, is there time for me to read one thing from that?
Sure. I think we've got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
If it's not too long.
Yeah, I had a piece come out in this little zine here called Thread. And they're out of Seattle, I believe. But this is just a very short piece that is in Dear Ted. And it starts with a quote from the book The Phantom Prince, which is the book Elizabeth Kendall wrote about her experience with Ted Bundy. So she was his girlfriend during his killing spree, unbeknownst to her, but she kind of talks about she always had these suspicions and like always felt like something was wrong, and she even like anonymously called the police and stuff, and it's really an amazing thing. Like I related to it. I mean, I've, to my knowledge, never dated an actual serial killer, but like the style of manipulation resonated with me very hard.
Wow.
And it's a wonderful book. It's really great. But anyway, it starts with a quote. This is someone saying something to her about writing the book, actually. It says, "You're asking people to feel sorry for you. My God, people died. You're one of the lucky ones. You lived." I resent the term survivor. It seems to negate those who did not, in fact, survive. Dead girls are people too. You may not be a survivor, but your life still matters. Even if you're alive, it's possible that you are not a survivor. You might be a die on the insider. You might have died on the inside because your interior garden was slashed and burned. You're technically still alive, but you don't count as a survivor. Emotionally, you didn't make it. Emotionally, you never stood a chance. As a high-risk self-leaver, there's no way you could have ever fallen in love and been a survivor. Survivor is antithetical to self-leaver, dire. You may be alive and dead inside, but you still matter. That's probably a bit of a mind fuck there.
Yeah, it's excellent. And I think you make a strong point about emotional death and manipulation. And I think most anybody can relate to experience where you're caught in someone's web and you don't know how to get out, or you're, you don't know what you're getting into. Even sometimes you're involved with someone and they're under the skin, manipulating you, and you don't really recognize it until after the fact, maybe, or when you separate and you move on. And there's a lot of the
disastrous consequences, like suicide and whatever.
Yeah.
And like it's actually beyond just like bitches getting their hearts broken,
Right.
Like it's
I totally understand.
I mean, it's not as bad as like like cutting someone's head off and keeping it on your nightstand like Ted Bundy, but like, so I mean, I realize what I'm doing is controversial by using this very real, very evil and destructive thing as a metaphor for something, I guess, arguably less evil, but like, I mean, I'm aware of that, and people don't have to like it and don't have to agree. That's one of the best things about life, is we don't have to agree.
Because we are not
exactly.
from we live in different worlds. So we don't have to agree, but we agree to disagree to come up with the way forward. I perfectly understand the world you live, and I appreciate every bit of the line you present. And I understand deeply. When I listen to a poem, I get it deeply, beyond just the surface, because we read beyond the line, because we too, we write beyond the line. As fellow poets, when you present something, you really understand the message of the person. It's not that you are biased. It is the word you live. It is your own word that you are trying to convey to people. We people need to understand. And we cannot say you just have to dance to the tune of others too. So perfectly your message is conveyed. And those who have the same word with you will definitely dance to your tune. We sincerely appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your time with us. Dustin?
We have been watching the New York Parrot Literary Corner. Please subscribe. We're looking for the 1 million viewer challenge. We're trying to get as many people